So, Unconditional Surrender Case Blue, print and play. This is a preview of the Unconditional Surrender system, which is a P500 game, which GMT is got on its list. And I think it's kind of stalled a little bit, which I know there hasn't been a lot of buzz about it. When I first looked at it, I said, I want this. I'm interested in this. Just because there is no really good game on the idea of this kind of high-level, very small number of counters, smaller footprint, smaller playing time, strategic World War II. In this case, it's just going to be Eastern Theater of or European Theater of Operations. And this will give you a chance to look at some of the innovations in the core ground war mechanics. The game itself interested me, though, in the sense of that the Unconditional Surrender itself, in the sense of, wow, I really want something to replace Hitler's War, in terms of that not quite at the Third Reich, and certainly not at the Axis empires with advanced Third Reich, ETO, whatever level of complexity. But more detailed than anything like an Axis and Allies type game. Written with a look at, let's try to, capture the historical reality rather than just, hey, here's sort of a situation, roll some dice. In fact, one of my big complaints about Hitler's War is that it is a little too open. It feels not like World War II. I see units doing really weird stuff. What I'm going to say I'm glad to see about this is that although these mechanisms that are in play for this game, and look at the intro if you want to see what they're like, are actually pretty innovative. I've never seen a game with an I go, you go structure like this, but the pulsed movement where you're moving one unit after another in this sort of way. And I think it works very, very well to recreate the breakthrough type situation. Well, no, it's not true. I haven't never seen it. Hitler's War, in fact, has it, but it doesn't handle it in as conventional a fashion as this. This handles it in a semi-conventional fashion in the sense that you don't just have a counter where you're keeping track of strength and a firepower table. It's using more of a reducto ad absurdum type combat system where you just have this list of modifiers. Now that can be kind of tricky, and it certainly was for me, and it's going to take a while to get used to. But it plays out because the units aren't just charging around each other, capturing territory and creating these bubbles that are impossible to break through. It feels a lot more realistic than Hitler's War in terms of, I've played the Barbarossa scenario for Hitler's War, and then just devolves into something silly. This actually feels like World War II, and it does so on a level that I'd say is very similar to, say, No Retreat. In fact, this print and play is very much in that same alley in terms of what I think is one of those games where you sit, if you're me, and think really, really hard about what you're going to do. Because every little move that you make can be a big deal. And you really want to have sort of the straightforward, clear goal as to what you're aiming for, and you want to absolutely optimize your forces. Now, I have a word for that, and it's not really the kind of game that I'm usually interested in. And to be frank, this is not something that I'd be usually interested in because it is of that, very competitive type of war game. Meant to fit into, you know, a couple of hours of sitting down and really outthinking your opponent. There's luck. There's no question there's luck. There's not a lot of luck, though. The combat system is actually fairly predictable. I find that you can have a pretty good idea whether or not you're going to get anywhere. You could be handed either a good break or a bad one, but it's pretty easy to tell where you've got a good chance of breaking through and where you don't when you start looking at the chart itself. And you know, you can see, well, I'm going to be rolling this high on average, and he's going to be rolling here, and I've got a lot of padding where the results are in my favor. That's good. So you can really make pretty good predictions as to how well your attack is likely to succeed. There are a lot of the competitive wargamers. I'd say things are split about 50-50. And for me, this isn't interesting on that level. I enjoyed playing around with it because this is a new system. This is a really new system. I've seen hints of some of the aspects here and there, but the paying for every move that you make, paying your production costs, you have the choice between, you know, activating a unit to try to grab territory or to damage the opponent, or replacement points that you're going to need. Now, in this particular game, Germany almost always early on didn't have much to do with its points but move. They have a limited amount of points that they can spend on repairing their air capacity. But for the most part, they're not taking a lot of damage. But when I think you hit the full unconditional surrender, you're going to be, you know, having to decide what units to purchase, what not, and aspects like that, which really kind of is exciting. The full game, I took a glance at the rules. I've looked at it before, and it just really excited me. You've got, you know, political alignments in a sense of the same sort of way that you have in Axis empires. You have this national will concept, which is how you're going to defeat your enemies, is by breaking their will, which I always like a great deal. I haven't looked at how these mechanisms work. You know, I have such a backlog of games. I know I want to see what Salvasta does with this, with his experience from Axis empires, his feeling of, look, we want to try to, you know, bring this to a bigger audience and make a smaller game out of it, one that maybe is playable in a long evening, I'm thinking, for the full one. Kind of in that same range as Hitler's War, but one that works, one that has good rules and a good solid system that can reproduce a World War II situation nicely without forcing you into it. Trying to remember what else kind of really excited me about it. The National Will definitely did. It's got kind of these postures. I don't remember what the correct word is. I don't remember the word they use. Same word they use in the Axis Empire series, where a nation is restricted by certain ideas, and you're going to try to push your allies back into a more fully into the war, and you're going to try to, you know, keep your enemies from activating more fully, from going into a total war type of posture throughout the game, so that you can concentrate more on one foe or another and choose your attack time wisely. Really high level strategic game, because, you know, units don't have strength, they don't have movement. The movement points are very simple. They're just 10 for motorized, 8 for everything else. You're going to see naval rules in that, which don't look terribly complicated. You're going to see the strategic warfare in there. a number of new things are showing up. It's a much, much thicker rule book, but it's covering it from this such a high level and so little detail on the operational side of the game, boiling it down to this really, really simple but requiring a huge amount of thought and effort to do things perfectly of an operational game, that I think it's going to be really, really appealing to a lot of people. This, again, may not be right up my alley all the time, but I'm still very much looking forward to it because I want something in that range. Anyway, what's great about this is it's going to give you a chance to look at the system for free, and you can print it out, you know, with a color printer almost. There's almost nothing, there's almost no components. You don't have to worry. The map is fairly small. Now, of course, you could blow it and the counters up to produce more of a quality product for your own use. But I think you've got a game that serves as one of those really good little competitive games just in this freebie. And it's showing a lot of promise for what the full unconditional surrender is going to be like. I'm still really excited about it. Now, I do have to say, if you looked at my discussion, and especially my first look at the rules caused a lot of trouble for me. The charts caused trouble for me because I have just a problem with following a straight down line of things. And the rules really, you kind of have to follow through the sequence of play a couple of times. It's not very complicated, but you kind of have to capture each segment and understand it fully, and you only get that through playing. And I play things so seldomly. I usually don't repeat games. This is such a different system, and there's so many different little thoughts in it from what, you know, your standard little operational SPI or Avalon Hill War game would be like, that it's like learning CDGs again for me, all over again. It's capturing this whole new concept of a game, and that was very frustrating. I have to admit that. But I think there is a really nice, clean system in here that, after a few plays, probably is largely second nature, and it'll be a lot easier to make those key decisions if you have these charts basically in your heart, you know? And that's where I have to be to even understand a game. And that's, you know, I had a hard time when I first started with war games, and I've had a hard time with each new bump. And this is just one of those complete paradigm shifts in a lot of ways. I really suggest you take a look at this. Just for the cleverness, if nothing else, of how it all kind of fits together and works together. And to me, that is just, you know, I'm always impressed when I see something that's this new and this different. But also, I think this is, for that competitive side, this freebie is a heck of a good game. All right, up it goes. Oh, one thing that I can't talk about this for the competitive side is what the balance is like. Just for that. That may be the flaw here. I think it's going to be a rough go for the Germans, but I only played once and didn't know what I was doing. But it looks like a tough slog, and that's the historical right. I mean, the victory conditions are a big stretch. However, I came close to them. I came within one city, and there was still a chance on the last turn. So I don't know. It's not terribly unbalanced if it's unbalanced in either direction, I think. All right.